Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty heavy. A really urgent question, actually. How does a society, a civilized one, slip into tyranny? Not with a bang, not some big revolution, but quietly.
Yeah, through complacency, through tiny steps. It's the kind of story that, frankly, keeps you up at night.
Exactly. And we're going deep into a source that really lays this bare. Milton Mayer's 1955 book, They Thought They Were Free. The Germans, 1933-45.
Right. Mayer did something incredible. He didn't just study documents. He went and lived in a German town after the war and talked to 10 ordinary men. Not Nazis with a capital N, necessarily, but, the guys who lived through it, who enabled it.
The bill collector, the baker.
Yeah.
The everyday people.
Precisely. And our mission here as we dive into this isn't just a history lesson about Germany. It's about pulling out the warning signs, the universal truths, because Mayer's whole point was that this wasn't some unique German flaw.
Okay, so the core idea, the thesis, is that Nazism wasn't like flipping a switch. It was gradual, accepted bit by bit through these small compromises people made, trading a little freedom here for a little security there, or just wanting things to feel normal.
That's the absolute crux of it. They traded liberty for security, for convenience, for the feeling that things were finally stable after years of chaos. And the terrifying part, they genuinely believed, many of them, that they were still free while everything was crumbling around them.
That's chilling. The danger wasn't that they were monsters, but they were all potentially susceptible to that same trade-off.
That's the warning Mayer hammers home. It's about human nature.
Okay, let's get into who these men actually were. Mayer goes to Germany, and he's not looking for Goebbels or Himmler. He wants the average German, right? Because Nazism, fundamentally, was a mass movement.
It had to be. You can't run a country like that with just a handful of fanatics. Mayer called them the 69 million plus. He knew the regime needed the support, or at least the quiet acceptance, of almost everyone. So he finds this little town, Kronenberg.
And he finds his 10 guys.
Yeah, the little men. A bill collector, a tailor, cabinet maker, baker, a teacher. People you wouldn't notice on the street. Utterly unremarkable, which is precisely why their stories are so powerful. They show us everyday life inside this horrific system.
Let's take one, Hans Simon, the bill collector. He sounds like he was maybe a bit more enthusiastic, an old fighter.
He was. He joined the party early, got a low number, 5813, which was a point of pride. But look where it got him. Cell leader. That's the lowest rank imaginable.
What does a cell leader even do?
Basically, he was responsible for maybe 8 households on his block. Collecting dues, handing out pamphlets, keeping an eye on things, passing on gossip. Tiny, tiny influence. He wasn't shaping policy. He was like the neighborhood enforcer of conformity, a busybody with a badge.
So it's about that local pressure, not grand ideology for many. And the big draw you mentioned earlier was economics. People were desperate after Weimar.
Desperate is an understatement. Hyperinflation, unemployment, political street fights. It was chaos. They were traumatized by the instability. So when the Nazis came in promising order, promising jobs,
people listened.
They more than listened. The Nazis delivered, at least initially, massive public works, rearmament, unemployment plummeted. For someone who'd been out of work for years, watching their family struggle, that felt like salvation. Everything else seemed secondary.
Like Baker Wiedeking. His reason for supporting the party was crystal clear, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Mayer asked him why he believed in National Socialism, and he said, point blank, it promised to solve the unemployment problem. And it did, full stop.
But then he adds that qualifier. But I never imagined what it would lead to.
Right, and Mayer pushes him, what did it lead to? Thinking, the Holocaust, the terror.
And Wiedeking says,
war. Just war. It shows you how narrow his focus was. The absolute worst outcome in his mind was another devastating war like the first one, or economic ruin, the persecution of minorities. It just wasn't on his radar as the primary catastrophe.
It's about those immediate, tangible threats.
Yeah.
And the benefits felt very personal too, right? Like the cabinet maker, Klingelhofer.
Karl Klingelhofer, yeah. He saw party members getting promotions in the fire department, so he joins. And then, boom, 1935, he gets this massive government loan, $2,000, which was a fortune then to take over his dad's shop.
How did he describe getting that loan?
Ungeheuer. Unheard of. Impossible. When the system delivers something that life-changing, solving your biggest problem, how likely are you to criticize its other aspects? You feel indebted.
Which brings us to maybe the most disturbing finding. That 9 out of these 10 men looked back on the Nazi years as the best time of their lives. How is that even possible, knowing what we know?
It's profoundly unsettling, isn't it? But Mayer unpacks it. It was about concrete things. First, job security, huge. Second, the kids. Parents genuinely felt the Hitler Youth kept their kids disciplined, busy, off the streets. They saw structure, not necessarily indoctrination.
And then there was the fun, the state-sponsored stuff.
Yeah, the Kraft durch Freud program, Strength Through Joy. This was genius in a really sinister way. It offered incredibly cheap holidays, trips to Norway, Spain, the seaside, for working-class people who'd never dreamed of a vacation.
So it made them feel included, valued.
Totally. Part of something big and successful. Imagine never having a holiday your whole life and suddenly the government sends you on a cruise. When things are better at home, better on the job, kids are behaving. Mayer quotes them asking, essentially, what more does a husband and father want to know?
They traded the political questions for that personal lightness, that stability.
That's the bargain. And most took it gladly.
Okay, so that personal contentment sets the stage for how the tyranny actually took hold. Mayer calls it gradualism. It wasn't one big shock.
No, the gap between the government and the people just widened slowly, gradually and insensibly, as Mayer puts it. Like the tide going out, you don't notice until you're stranded.
And people got used to it. Was it being governed by surprise?
Exactly. Big decisions were made in secret. New laws, new rules, quotas, they'd just appear. And the excuse was always ready.
Either it's too complicated for you average folks, or
the big one. National security. Too dangerous to discuss openly. Enemies everywhere, internal and external. And because they trusted the head, the Fuhrer, they accepted it. He knows best. Just trust the plan.
It sounds like a deliberate strategy. The teacher, Hildebrand, he talked about this with a colleague, a philologist.
Yeah, that philologist really nailed it. He said the regime was brilliant at manufacturing crises and then swooping in with real reforms to solve them. This constant cycle kept everyone scrambling.
Too busy dealing with the latest decree or form or meeting to think.
Precisely. Swamped with the day-to-day. The philologist said they had no time to think about fundamental things, and then he added that cynical kicker.
That it was an excuse not to think for people who did not want to think anyway. Ouch.
It's harsh, but it points to that desire for ease. Thinking is hard work. Questioning is risky. It was easier to just keep your head down and deal with the immediate task.
And this leads to the moral slide, the step C problem the philologist talked about.
Yeah. Each new step was just a little worse than the last one. Step A, crack down on communists. Okay. Step B, make people take loyalty oaths. Okay. Step C, restrict Jewish businesses. Well,
if you didn't stand up at step B, why now at step C? It's only a bit worse. The ground keeps shifting under your feet.
And that one big moment you might hope for where everyone rises up together and says, stop, it never comes. Because by the time things are truly undeniably monstrous, you're already neck deep in it. You've made too many small concessions.
So what did the regime actually ask most people to do?
This is key. For the vast majority, it asked for almost nothing active. Just don't interfere, go on with your lives, keep your head down, maintain your routine.
It's passive compliance.
Passive collaboration, really.
Yeah.
Mayer uses this great comparison. In America, maybe a woman volunteers for the Red Cross in her spare time. In Nazi Germany, she volunteers for the Frauenbund, the Nazi Women's League.
And what did the Frauenbund do? Was it overtly political?
Not always on the surface. They ran health clinics, managed rationing efforts, organized childcare, gave homemaking classes, stuff that looks like essential community service, patriotic duty even.
So not joining looked suspicious. Unpatriotic, like you weren't pulling your weight for the community.
Exactly. The system co-opted the very impulse to be a good citizen. It made conformity look like civic virtue.
Which must have made it incredibly hard for people who actually disagreed with the regime, especially if they had a history of it.
That's the cruel irony. Mayer points out that former liberals or socialists, people who might have been inclined to protest, had the most reason to conform now. Their past record was like a target on their back.
Any hint of dissent could bring up their unreliable history.
Absolutely. They were terrified. Speaking out wasn't just risking your job. It was risking being labeled an enemy of the state because of who you used to be. So they had to be extra careful, extra quiet, extra compliant.
Like teacher Hildebrand again? He admitted he joined the party.
Why? Out of fear and advantage. Fear of his past liberal activities being dredged up, and the advantage of showing loyalty now to bury that past. It was self-preservation masquerading as conversion. The people most likely to see the danger felt the most pressure to stay silent.
So the gradualism, the pressure to conform, it all builds. But then comes Kristallnacht, November 1938. That must have been a shock, even in Cronenberg.
It was the moment the violence became undeniable, public, right there on their streets. Mayer sets the scene beautifully, contrasting it with the town's sleepy routine, the town hall rooster, the night watchman's call, this deep sense of order.
The lullaby of normalcy.
And then it shatters. The local SA guys meet up at the pub, Huntsman's Rest, supposedly for an anniversary celebration.
For the beer hall putsch anniversary. Right?
Yeah. And that meeting turns into the planning session for burning down the synagogue.
Let's look at how Mayer's little men reacted, because it wasn't uniform, was it? There was a whole spectrum of involvement.
Definitely. On one end, you have someone like Taylor Schwenke. He was a Sturmfuhrer, a local SA leader. He wasn't just watching, he was organizing it. Getting the men, getting access to the fire hoses, active perpetrator.
Okay, so direct involvement. Then there's Klingelhofer, the cabinet maker, who was also in the fire department. He got called out.
Right, the adjutant to the chief. He gets the call around 1:25 a.m. The synagogue is burning. But what does he do? He doesn't sound the main town alarm, only a local response.
Why not?
Because the orders were clear: protect the Aryan buildings nearby, but let the synagogue burn. So his focus, his heroism, such as it was on saving things like altar cloths from the adjacent church buildings. He followed the rules of the regime, even in the midst of its atrocity. Conditional morality.
Wow. Okay, then there's Baker Wedekind, the jobs guy.
Yeah.
What was his reaction?
Pure indifference bordering on avoidance. He'd quit the SA earlier because he didn't like the rough stuff. When he hears the commotion, his first thought is maybe he should just go work in his garden plot. Stay out of it. No, his curiosity got the better of him, slyly. He decided he'd just walk past and have a good look the next morning. Minimum engagement, maximum deniability.
And finally, Emil Ruprecht, the locomotive engineer. His story is different. Silent resistance.
It's incredibly powerful. His 14-year-old son, Horst, is in the Hitler Youth, all excited to go watch the synagogue burn. Ruprecht stops him.
What does he say? Does he give him a lecture?
No, that's the point. He's a little man. He doesn't have the words, the arguments. There's this long, silent confrontation. And finally, all Ruprecht manages is, and you, Horstmar, you want to go and see them burn God's house down.
Just that. A simple moral question.
It was enough. The son didn't go. Ruprecht said nothing because he had nothing to say. He couldn't articulate why it was wrong in political terms, but he knew fundamentally that burning a house of worship was wrong, and he wouldn't let his son partake. It shows that moral core could still exist, even if it couldn't express itself politically or collectively.
And how did the town, the authorities, handle this public atrocity afterwards? Did they try to hide it?
Oh, absolutely. The local paper, the Kronenberger Zeitung, reported the arrest of Jewish men for protective custody, buried in a tiny headline on page 4.
Did the 10 men Mayer interviewed remember seeing that article?
None of them. Whether they genuinely missed it or chose to ignore it, who knows? The truth was technically available, but easily overlooked or dismissed.
And people heard rumors, right, about what was really happening.
Yeah, the surviving Jewish tailor, Merowitz, confirmed it. People heard things, but they didn't want to believe it, didn't want to get involved, didn't want to be seen as looking for trouble.
And it was easy to dismiss the rumors. How?
As enemy propaganda. Both Nazis and anti-Nazis fell back on that. In a time of perceived national crisis, believing the worst about your own government, the one bringing stability, was just too psychologically costly. Easier to think it was lies spread by outsiders.
So this passivity, this looking away, how did the Germans themselves understand their role? Mayer talks on this idea of non-responsibility.
Right. It's a subtle but crucial distinction. They didn't feel irresponsible in a moral sense necessarily. They felt non-responsible in a political sense. They genuinely believed they had no power, no sovereignty to influence the state.
Because historically, Germany needed a strong leader, a head, not millions of citizens arguing.
That was the deep-seated cultural belief. Government was this enduring thing above them, not their agent. Their job was to be governed well, not to govern. So if the government did bad things, well, we had our own troubles. It wasn't their domain. This made moral irresponsibility seem okay.
They could just compartmentalize. The state does its thing, I do mine.
Exactly. But the real gut punch, the universal lesson, comes from the one man who did grapple with the moral cost. The chemical engineer.
He's the one who really understood the compromise he was making?
Painfully so. He's Mayer's star witness, in a way, highly educated, saw the implications, and he's the one who delivers that devastating line. That day the world was lost, and it was I who lost it.
What day was that? What decision led him there?
It was 1935. He, like many professionals, was ordered to take an oath of fidelity, of loyalty, directly to the Führer.
And the dilemma was?
Refuse the oath, lose your job instantly, become an outcast, vulnerable. But taking the oath meant swearing loyalty to Hitler, to the regime he despised.
So how did he justify taking it?
This is the insidious part. He reasoned that if he refused and lost his position, he couldn't help anyone. He couldn't protect his Jewish colleagues, couldn't offer shelter, couldn't work from within. He convinced himself that taking the oath, this positive evil, was necessary to achieve a possible good later on.
The classic lesser of two evils argument applied personally. Stay inside the system to do some good.
Right. He even said he made a mental reservation when he took the oath, crossed his fingers, hoped God knew he didn't mean it. But, as Mayer notes, that reservation meant nothing to the state, only to him. He did the certain, immediate, evil-swearing loyalty for the uncertain, future possibility of doing good.
And did he do that good? Did he help people?
He did. He estimates he saved maybe 100 or 1,000 lives over the years using his position. But looking back,
he saw it differently.
He saw it as an anthill compared to the mountain of death and destruction the regime caused. His small acts of good couldn't possibly outweigh the massive evil he felt he'd enabled by not resisting at that crucial moment.
So what was the real failure in his eyes? What should he have done?
The failure, he realized, was a failure of faith in the collective power of resistance. He believed that if he and others like him, the educated, the professionals, the civil servants, had refused that oath together in 1935.
It would have sent a signal.
A massive signal. He thought his refusal could have been the spark for thousands and thousands like him who were also wrestling with it, waiting for someone to lead. He believed that collective moral stand would have heartened millions and could have actually stopped the regime, or at least severely weakened it early on.
So his individual calculated compromise, multiplied by thousands of others making the same calculation,
became the bedrock the regime was built on. That's the tragedy. He confessed he committed that evil, taking the oath, not because he was bad, but because he lacked the faith that he and others like him could actually remove mountains through collective moral courage. He chose the small, manageable good over the terrifying, uncertain, but potentially world-saving collective no.
He felt he lost the world because he didn't have the faith to lead that refusal.
Exactly. And he's clear, we who haven't lived under that kind of total pressure can't fully judge, but we can learn the principle. The compromise is never truly small. Trading your integrity for security or for the potential to do good later, that's the fuel authoritarianism runs on. He understood that his complicity wasn't just passive, it was an active choice, a failure of nerve repeated across the nation.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. Listening to these stories, these incredibly honest, painful reflections, what are the main takeaways Mayer leaves us with?
I think there are two big ones. First, tyranny doesn't usually arrive with jackboots overnight. It creeps in through countless small compromises made by ordinary people who just want life to be stable, predictable, maybe a little easier. That desire for normalcy is powerful.
And dangerous, potentially.
And second, the big moments of moral failure often aren't about active evil. They're about the collective abandonment of resistance. It's when everyone decides individually to commit that small, justifiable evil, take the oath, stay silent, look away, hoping for some uncertain good later, instead of having faith in the power of a united, principled stand right now.
That failure of faith in the collective no. Mayer's Germans, he said, didn't know they were slaves, so they didn't know they'd been freed.
Yeah.
We haven't faced that same total pressure, thankfully, but that engineer's lesson, it still hits hard.
It absolutely does. The failure to even try to remove mountains because you're focused on the anthill in front of you, that resonates.
So the final thought, the provocation for everyone listening. It comes back to that engineer, doesn't it? He wasn't thinking, what if I had suffered? He was thinking, what if my no had inspired thousands?
Exactly. So the question for us isn't the hypothetical, what would I have done back then? It's much more immediate. What small, seemingly minor, easily justifiable compromises are we making today in our jobs, in our communities, in our silence on things that don't directly affect us?
Compromises that maybe multiplied by thousands or millions could pave the way for something we really don't want tomorrow. Are we, collectively, losing the world bit by bit through a failure of faith in our own principled actions?
That's the question to sit with, the power and the responsibility of saying no, even when it's hard, even when it feels small.
A lot to think about there.
Well, that's about all the time we have. You've been listening to The Deep Dive from Wake Up and Smell the Freedom, where ideas percolate. Thanks for joining us as we continue to explore the ideas that shape liberty and continue to shape us today. Remember, the pursuit of liberty begins with understanding, and understanding begins with asking the right questions. Until next time.
Bye-bye.